A tiny German Shepherd puppy stumbles out of the darkness, dragging something behind her, and she walks straight past everyone in the busy street, heading directly toward one man. A Delta Force operator trying to disappear into civilian life. The pup drops a blood-stained collar at his boots and collapses, whimpering. But when he reads the name tag, his blood runs cold. Because that name, that dog, belongs to his former handler, a brother he watched die 3 years ago in Afghanistan. And this puppy shouldn't exist. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The mountain town of Timber Falls, Montana, was the kind of place where people came to forget. Where the weight of the past could be buried under endless pine forests and the clean, sharp air of the Rockies. It was exactly why Marcus Kane had chosen it. A place to become invisible. To let the war finally let him go. But the war, as he was about to learn, had one final mission for him. And it was delivered by 4 tiny paws and eyes that somehow recognized a soldier she had never met. Marcus Kane was invisible. And that was exactly the point. He'd spent 18 months perfecting the art of being nobody. In Timber Falls, he was just Mark, the quiet guy who worked at Holloway's Hardware, the one who knew the difference between a 3/4-inch bolt and a 1/2 inch without looking. The man who said hello but never stopped to chat. Who paid in cash. Who lived in a small cabin 15 miles outside town where the only neighbors were elk and the occasional black bear. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, the kind of day where the sky was so blue it almost hurt to look at. Marcus was walking out of the hardware store, a bag of wood screws in one hand and a new drill bit in the other. The street was busy, tourists mostly. People in expensive outdoor gear who'd come to see the fall colors, to take photos of mountains they'd never climb. And that's when he saw her. The puppy came from the alley between the hardware store and the old bakery. She was tiny, maybe 4 months old, all oversized paws and ears that hadn't grown into her head yet. A German Shepherd, sable and black coat matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. She was dragging something, a leather collar, too big for her neck. She pulled it along the sidewalk like a child dragging a blanket. Marcus stopped walking. The puppy passed a couple taking selfies. Past an old man sitting on a bench feeding pigeons. Past a woman pushing a stroller. She ignored all of them. Her dark eyes were locked on one person. Marcus. She walked right up to him, dropped the collar at his boots, and sat, her tiny body swaying with exhaustion. She looked up at him and whimpered, a soft, desperate sound that cut through the noise of the street like a blade. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd seen dogs in Afghanistan, working dogs, brave, loyal animals who saved lives every single day. He'd seen them injured, seen them die. But this puppy, looking at him with those knowing eyes, triggered something deeper, something he couldn't name. He knelt slowly. The puppy didn't move, didn't flinch. She just watched him with an intensity that was unsettling in such a young animal. Marcus reached for the collar. The leather was old, worn, stained dark with something he recognized immediately. Blood. Not fresh, but not ancient either. He turned it over in his hands. And that's when he saw the brass plate riveted to the leather. Military issue. The kind they put on K9 handler equipment. He read the engraving, and his world stopped. SGT James Reeves, K9 handler, KIA 2021. The bag of screws hit the pavement. The drill bit clattered beside it. Marcus stared at the name, read it again, and again, because it couldn't be real. James Reeves had been his teammate, his friend, his brother in everything but blood. And James Reeves had died 3 years ago in a valley, in Kandahar province. Marcus had been there, had held him while he bled out from shrapnel wounds, had watched the life leave his eyes. James had a K9 partner, a German shepherd named Luna. She'd been with him on that mission. The explosion that killed James had sent Luna running into the darkness. The team had searched for hours, but the Taliban were closing in. They'd had to leave her, presumed dead, listed as KIA in the official report. Marcus looked down at the puppy. She was still sitting, still watching him, waiting. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. His voice was rough, raw. The puppy whimpered again. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She collapsed onto her side, her breathing shallow and rapid. Marcus's training kicked in. He scooped her up. She was light, too light, malnourished, dehydrated. Her ribs showed through her dirty coat. "Hey," a woman's voice called out. "Is that dog okay?" Marcus ignored him. He was already moving. There was a veterinary clinic 3 blocks down Main Street. He'd passed it 100 times, never gone inside. He walked fast. The puppy's heartbeat was rapid against his chest, thready, weak. The clinic was small, a converted house with a painted sign hanging from the porch. Timber Falls Veterinary Care, Dr. Sarah Chen. Marcus kicked the door open. A bell chimed. A young woman behind the reception desk looked up, startled. "I need a vet, now," Marcus said. The receptionist took one look at the puppy and stood. "Exam room 2. I'll get Dr. Chen." Marcus carried the puppy into a small room that smelled like antiseptic and dog shampoo. He laid her gently on the metal examination table. She didn't move. Her eyes were half closed now, her breathing even more labored. The door opened. A woman in her early 30s walked in, Asian American, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing scrubs and a white coat. Her eyes went immediately to the puppy, then to Marcus. She didn't ask questions, just moved to the table and began her examination. "How long has she been like this?" Dr. Chen asked. Her hands were quick, efficient, checking the puppy's gums, her eyes, listening to her heart. "I found her 5 minutes ago," Marcus said. "On the street. She walked up to me and collapsed." Dr. Chen's eyes flicked to the collar still clutched in Marcus's hand. She didn't comment, just nodded. "She's severely dehydrated, malnourished. Looks like she's been on her own for a while. I'm going to start an IV, get some fluids into her." Marcus watched as she worked. The vet's movements were practiced. Calm, she had the same efficiency he'd seen in combat medics. No wasted motion, no panic, just focus. "You former military?" Marcus asked. He didn't know why. Maybe because he needed to know if he could trust her. Dr. Chen glanced at him. A small smile touched her lips. "Army medic. 2 tours in Iraq. You?" "Something like that," Marcus said. She didn't push, just nodded and went back to the puppy. She'd gotten an IV line in. The tiny dog didn't even react. Dr. Chen examined her more thoroughly now, checked her legs, her paws, ran her hands along the small body. "She's got some old scars here," Dr. Chen said. She pointed to the puppy's shoulder. "Looks like barbed wire, maybe. And here, on her back leg. This is a healed fracture. Didn't set quite right." She looked at Marcus. "This puppy's been through hell. Can you scan her?" Marcus asked. "For a microchip?" Dr. Chen's eyebrows raised. But she didn't question it. She retrieved a small handheld scanner and passed it over the puppy's shoulders and neck. It beeped. Her eyes widened slightly. "She's chipped," Dr. Chen confirmed. She looked at the scanner's display. "Registration number Alpha Kilo 94721. That's a military designation." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Can you tell me anything else?" Dr. Chen moved to her computer, typed rapidly, frowned. "The registry shows she was chipped 4 months ago. Bred at a private facility. No. Location listed. But the bloodline?" She trailed off. looked at Marcus. The dam is listed as Luna. Registration number Alpha Kilo 2158. A military working dog. Reported KIA in 2021. The room was silent except for the quiet beep of the IV monitor. Marcus's mind was racing. Luna. James's Luna. She hadn't died. She'd survived. Long enough to have puppies, and this puppy, this tiny survivor, had found him. Across 3 years, across thousands of miles. She'd found the one person who would understand what that collar meant. This doesn't make sense, Marcus said quietly. Military working dogs don't just disappear and start breeding. They're tracked, accounted for. Dr. Chen was watching him carefully. Unless someone didn't want them accounted for. Marcus met her eyes. He saw understanding there. She'd been in the military. She knew how things could fall through the cracks, how things could be made to disappear. I need to make a call, Marcus said. Dr. Chen nodded. Use my office. I'll stay with her. Marcus stepped into the small office, closed the door. He pulled out his phone. It was a secure device. Encrypted. He'd kept it even after leaving Delta Force, just in case. He scrolled through his contacts. Found the one he needed. Thomas Rivera. Call sign Ghost. His former team leader. The only person from his old life he still trusted. The phone rang 3 times. Then a familiar voice answered. Kane, this is a surprise. Ghost, I need information. Marcus said. No preamble. No small talk. That wasn't their way. I'm listening. James Reeves, his K9, Luna. What happened to her after we left Kandahar? There was a pause. Marcus could hear the shift in Ghost's breathing, the subtle change that meant he was moving to a secure location. Why are you asking about this? Ghost's voice was cautious now. Because I'm looking at her puppy right now, and that puppy is carrying James's handler collar. The silence on the other end lasted 5 full seconds. When Ghost spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. Where are you? Timber Falls, Montana. Stay there, don't move. I'm pulling files now. Marcus could hear typing in the background. Luna was listed as KIA. Standard procedure when a MWD goes missing in hostile territory. Body was never recovered. The assumption was she died from injuries or was killed by local hostiles. What if she didn't die? Marcus asked. More typing. Then Ghost swore softly. There were reports, unconfirmed, about 6 months after we left that valley. Local informants claimed they'd seen coalition military dogs being moved through underground networks, sold to private contractors. We investigated, found nothing concrete. The leads went cold. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Someone took her. Someone brought her stateside. If that's true, Kane, you're looking at a serious operation. Military working dogs are federal property. Stealing one is a felony. Breeding them without authorization? That's a whole different level. I need you to dig deeper, Marcus said. I need to know who, where, and how many. This isn't your fight anymore, Ghost said. But his tone said he already knew that argument wouldn't work. James was my brother, Marcus said quietly. His dog survived. Someone's been using her, exploiting her. I'm making it my fight. Ghost sighed. Give me 48 hours. I'll see what I can pull from military intelligence databases. But Kane, if this is what I think it is, you're walking into something dangerous. These operations don't exist in a vacuum. They have protection, money, connections. I know, Marcus said. Send me everything you find. Encrypted channel. Roger that. And Kane, watch your back. The line went dead. Marcus stood in the quiet office for a moment. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. But inside, something had shifted. The careful, quiet life he'd built was already crumbling. And he realized he didn't care. He walked back into the exam room. Dr. Chen was sitting on a stool next to the table. The puppy was still unconscious, but her breathing was steadier now. The IV drip was working. "She's stabilizing," Dr. Chen said. "With fluids and food, she'll recover. Physically, at least." "Can she stay here tonight?" Marcus asked. Dr. Chen nodded. "I'll monitor her. But Marcus?" She'd heard the receptionist use his name. "Whatever this is, whatever you're walking into, be careful. I've seen that look before, in Iraq. It's the look soldiers get when they've found a mission." Marcus looked at the tiny puppy on the table, at James's collar still in his hand. "Some missions you don't choose," he said quietly. "They choose you." That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat at his small kitchen table in his cabin. His laptop open. The encrypted files from Ghost had started coming through around midnight, and with each document he read, the picture became clearer. And uglier. Luna hadn't just survived. She'd been captured by a Taliban splinter group who'd sold her to a black market broker. That broker had connections to a private military contractor based in the United States. The contractor's name was Sentinel Solutions. They operated in the gray areas, security, training, logistics. On paper, they were legitimate. But Ghost's files showed a different story. Sentinel Solutions had been acquiring military working dogs through illegal channels for 3 years. They bred them, trained them using classified military methods, then sold them to the highest bidder, foreign governments, criminal organizations, anyone with enough money. The dogs were marketed as elite protection animals, trained by former special operations personnel. No questions asked, and they were operating right here in Montana, 20 miles outside Timber Falls, on a 500-acre compound disguised as a private security training facility. Ghost's message at the end of the file was brief. Confirmed presence of at least 12 adult German shepherds on site. High probability Luna is among them. Local law enforcement has jurisdiction, but compound owner has connections. Tread carefully. Federal agencies monitoring, but no active investigation yet. You're on your own. Marcus closed the laptop. He walked to his window, looked out at the dark forest. The stars were brilliant above the mountains, cold and distant and indifferent. He'd come here to escape, to forget, to be no one. But that puppy had changed everything. She'd found him for a reason. Because somewhere on that compound, her mother was being held, being used. And James, his brother, his friend, deserved better than having his partner turned into a breeding machine for profit. Marcus made his decision. He wasn't a Delta Force operator anymore. He had no authority, no backup, no legal standing, but he had skills, experience, and a promise he'd made to James 3 years ago in that valley in Afghanistan. A promise to look after his own. And Luna, whether she knew it or not, was still his own. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. The invisible man. The ghost. He smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind that had made enemy combatants surrender without a fight, because Marcus Kane had just come out of retirement, and Sentinel Solutions had no idea what was coming for them. The war had found him after all, and this time it was personal. Marcus Kane hadn't worn his Delta Force uniform in 18 months. It hung in the back of his closet, sealed in a garment bag he'd never opened. The multicam pattern, the subdued American flag patch, the unit insignia he'd earned through blood and sacrifice. He'd thought that part of his life was over. But at 4 a.m, 3 days after the puppy found him, Marcus stood in front of his open closet and made a choice. If he was going to do this, he was going to do it right. As a soldier, not as a vigilante. He pulled the uniform out. The fabric was still crisp, still smelled faintly of the last mission. The last time he'd been Sergeant First Class Marcus Kane instead of just Mark from the hardware store. He dressed slowly, deliberately, combat shirt, pants, boots that he'd kept polished out of habit. The uniform fit the same, but the man wearing it felt different, heavier, older. He looked at himself in the mirror. The Delta Force operator stared back, and for the first time in 18 months, Marcus felt like himself. He loaded his truck before dawn. Binoculars, a spotting scope, a tactical backpack with water, rations, and a first aid kit. He didn't bring weapons. Not yet. This was reconnaissance, intelligence gathering. He needed to see what he was up against before he made any moves. The puppy, who he'd started calling Hope because she'd given him something he thought he'd lost, was recovering at Dr. Chen's clinic. Sarah had insisted on keeping her for a few more days, making sure she was strong enough. Marcus had agreed, because what he was about to do, Hope didn't need to see. The drive to the Sentinel Solutions compound took 40 minutes. Marcus followed Ghost's coordinates to a dirt service road that wound deep into the mountains, the kind of road that didn't appear on GPS, that locals knew to avoid. He parked his truck 3 miles out, covered it with a camouflage tarp, and started walking. The forest was dense here, old-growth pine and Douglas fir that blocked out the early morning sun. Marcus moved through it like he'd moved through 100 forests in a dozen countries. Silent, aware, reading the terrain, looking for signs of security, cameras, motion sensors, tripwires. He found the first camera a mile from the compound, mounted in a tree, pointed at the service road, military grade, thermal and night vision capable. Marcus made a mental note. He moved in a wide arc, staying off the main approaches, using the natural contours of the land. It took him 2 hours to reach an observation point, a rocky outcrop on a hillside that overlooked the compound. He settled into position, prone, binoculars up, and he began to catalogue what he saw. The compound was bigger than he'd expected. The main building was a converted lodge, 2 stories, log construction, expensive. Behind it were a series of outbuildings, kennels, training facilities, what looked like an armory. The entire property was surrounded by a chain-link fence, 12 feet high, topped with razor wire, security cameras every 50 yards. And there were dogs everywhere. Marcus counted 14 German shepherds in the outdoor kennels, all adults, all alert and healthy-looking from this distance. They moved with the controlled discipline of trained military working dogs, not pets, weapons, but it was the guards that concerned him most. 4 men visible from his position, all armed, all wearing tactical gear. They moved with purpose, with training. These weren't rent-a-cops, these were professionals, former military, maybe former law enforcement, the kind of men who knew how to handle a threat. Marcus watched for 6 hours. He noted the guard rotation schedule, the weak points in the fence line, the blind spots between camera coverage. He watched a black SUV arrive at noon. A man in an expensive suit stepped out. Tall, early 50s, grey hair. He walked like someone who was used to being in charge. The guards deferred to him. And then Marcus saw her. An older German shepherd was let out of one of the interior kennels. She moved stiffly, like her joints hurt. Her coat was dull. She'd been bred too many times, used up. But even from 300 yards away, Marcus recognized her gait, the way she held her head. Luna. His breath caught, his hands tightened on the binoculars. She was alive. She'd survived 3 years in this place. 3 years of being nothing but a breeding animal. And the rage that Marcus had kept buried, controlled, disciplined, began to surface. Cold and focused and absolutely lethal. He forced himself to breathe, to think. Emotion got soldiers killed. He needed to be smart about this. Marcus stayed until dusk. Then he moved back through the forest, retrieved his truck, and drove back to Timber Falls. He had the intelligence he needed. Now he needed a plan. And maybe, he thought, he needed allies. Sarah Chen was waiting for him at the clinic. She'd texted him earlier, said they needed to talk. When Marcus walked in, still wearing his Delta Force uniform, her eyes widened slightly. But she didn't comment, just led him to her office and closed the door. "Hope's doing well," Sarah said. "She's eating, getting stronger. But Marcus, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Sarah pulled up something on her computer. Security camera footage from the clinic's parking lot. Time stamped from earlier that day. It showed a sheriff's department vehicle pulling into the lot, a man in uniform getting out, walking to the clinic door, then leaving 5 minutes later. "That's Sheriff Robert Vaughn," Sarah said. "He came by asking about a stray German Shepherd puppy, said there'd been reports of one wandering Main Street, wanted to know if anyone had brought one in." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What did you tell him?" "I lied. Said I hadn't seen anything. But Marcus, the way he asked, it wasn't casual. He was fishing. And when he left, he sat in his car for 10 minutes, just watching the clinic." Marcus leaned forward, looked at the screen, studied the sheriff's face. "You think he's connected to Sentinel Solutions?" "I think it's a hell of a coincidence that a puppy shows up with a military canine collar and 2 days later the sheriff is personally investigating stray dog reports." Sarah met his eyes. "I did some digging. Sheriff Vaughn bought a new house last year, $200,000 over his salary range. He drives a truck that costs more than he makes in a year, and his daughter goes to a private college on a full scholarship provided by a charitable foundation. Guess who runs that foundation? Let me guess. Sentinel Solutions." "Bingo!" Sarah crossed her arms. "Marcus, if the local law is compromised, you can't go to them with this. Whatever you're planning, you're on your own." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm not on my own. I've got Ghost, and I've got you if you're willing." Sarah blinked. "Me? Marcus, I'm a vet, not a soldier. You're a former army medic who served in a combat zone. You know how to handle pressure, and you care about these dogs." He paused. "I saw your face when you examined Hope. You weren't just treating an animal. You were angry about what was done to her." Sarah looked away, then back. "Damn right I'm angry. What they're doing to those dogs, breeding them like livestock, selling them to God knows who, it's not just illegal, it's evil." She took a breath. "What do you need?" Before Marcus could answer, there was a knock on the office door. The receptionist poked her head in. "Dr. Chen, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. She's asking about the German Shepherd puppy." Marcus's hand went instinctively to his hip, where his sidearm would have been if he was carrying. Sarah noticed, put a hand on his arm. "Easy. Let's see who it is first." They walked to the waiting room. A woman stood there, late 20s, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a fleece jacket, but it was her eyes that caught Marcus's attention. They were sharp, intelligent, and filled with a pain he recognized. The pain of someone who'd lost something that could never be replaced. "I'm looking for information about a German Shepherd puppy," the woman said. Her voice was controlled, but there was an edge to it. "I heard one was brought into this clinic a few days ago." "Who are you?" Marcus asked. His tone was flat, neutral, not hostile, but not friendly. The woman's eyes went to his uniform. She noticed the insignia, the unit patch. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe. "My name is Alex Reeves," she said. "I'm a journalist with the Montana Free Press, and that puppy belongs to my brother. Or she would have, if he hadn't died 3 years ago in Afghanistan." Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. Reeves. Alex Reeves. James had talked about his little sister, The one who wanted to change the world with words instead of bullets. The one he'd worried about every single day he was deployed. "You're James's sister," Marcus said quietly. Alex's eyes widened. "You knew my brother?" "I served with him. I was there when he died." The air in the room changed, became heavier. Alex's controlled expression cracked, just slightly. "Then you know about Luna, his K9 partner." "I know they never found her body," Marcus said. "That's because she didn't die." Alex pulled out her phone, showed them a series of photographs. "I've been investigating Sentinel Solutions for 6 months. Started because I heard rumors about illegal K9 operations in Montana. I didn't know. It was connected to James until 2 weeks ago. I got a tip from someone inside the compound. They sent me these." The photos showed dogs, German shepherds, in kennels, being trained, and one photo showed a close-up of an older shepherd with a distinctive marking on her shoulder, a scar shaped like a crescent moon. Marcus had seen that scar 100 times. On James's phone, in the photos he'd kept of Luna. "That's her," Marcus said. "That's Luna." Alex nodded. Her hands were shaking slightly. "My brother died believing she was gone, that she'd suffered alone in some Afghan valley. But she's been here, in Montana, 20 miles from where I've been living for the last year, being used as a breeding dog for criminals." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I've been trying to build a case, gather evidence, but every time I get close, I hit a wall. Sheriff Vaughn shuts down my requests. The county prosecutor won't return my calls. It's like the whole system is protecting them." Sarah looked at Marcus, then at Alex. "That's because they are protecting them. Sentinel Solutions has connections, money. They've bought silence." Alex's jaw set. "Then we go around them. Federal authorities, FBI, ATF, someone who can't be bought." Marcus shook his head. "That takes time. Warrants, investigations. While we're building a case, they could move the dogs, destroy evidence, or worse." He looked at Alex. At Sarah. "I've got a contact. Former Delta Force. He's working the intelligence angle, getting us information on their operation, their security, their schedule. In 48 hours, I'm going in. I'm getting Luna out. And any other dog they're holding." "That's insane," Alex said. But her eyes said something different. They said she was listening. "It's a direct action mission," Marcus said. "The kind I've done 100 times, but I can't do it alone. I need someone who can coordinate with federal authorities. Someone who can make sure that when we hit that compound, the evidence we gather gets to people who can't ignore it." Alex was quiet. Then she nodded. "I have contacts, reporters at national outlets, FBI agents I've worked with on other stories. If you can get me proof, real documentation, I can make sure it goes viral before Sentinel Solutions can cover it up." Marcus looked at Sarah. "And I need medical support for the dogs. When we extract them, they're going to need immediate care. Can you handle that?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "I'll set up a temporary facility. My clinic isn't big enough, but I know a place. An old barn on my uncle's property. We can convert it, make it secure." Marcus felt something shift inside him. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a team. It wasn't Delta Force. It was a vet, a journalist, and a ghost working from 1,000 miles away. But it was a team. And that made all the difference. 48 hours, Marcus said. "Ghost is sending me final intel tomorrow. Guard schedules, building layouts, everything we need. We move the night after that." Alex met his eyes. "My brother trusted you, with his life. I'm trusting you with his legacy. Don't let him down." Marcus thought about James, about the promise he'd made, about Luna suffering for 3 years while he'd been hiding in the mountains. "I won't," he said. And it wasn't just a promise to Alex, it was a promise to himself. The invisible man was gone. The soldier had returned. and Sentinel Solutions had no idea the war was coming to their door. The night came fast and cold. October in Montana meant the temperature dropped to near freezing after sunset. The kind of cold that made your breath visible. That made metal sting when you touched it. Perfect conditions for what Marcus had planned. Cold meant the guards would be distracted, uncomfortable, less alert. Marcus stood in Sarah's barn, his Delta Force uniform now equipped with tactical gear Ghost had shipped overnight. A plate carrier, night vision goggles, a suppressed sidearm he'd retrieved from a cache he'd kept hidden. He wasn't going in to start a war, but he was going in prepared to finish one if necessary. Sarah was preparing the barn. She'd set up kennels, medical supplies, everything she'd need to triage a dozen traumatized dogs. Alex was at her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She'd already drafted the article, written the emails to her contacts. All she needed was the evidence, the proof that would make this story impossible to ignore. Ghost's voice came through Marcus's earpiece. Overwatch is in position. I've got eyes on the compound via satellite. Current count shows 3 guards on patrol. 1 inside the main building. The rest are probably in the barracks on the east side. Copy that, Marcus said quietly. He looked at Alex and Sarah. Once I'm inside, you both stay here. No matter what you hear on the comms, no matter what happens, you don't move until I give the all clear. Alex started to protest, but Sarah put a hand on her arm. He's right. We're not trained for this. We'd just get in the way. Marcus checked his watch. 2,200 hours. He'd be at the compound by 23:30. He had a 4-hour window before the next guard shift change. 4 hours to get in, get the dogs, and get out. He'd worked with less time in worse conditions, but never for stakes that felt this personal. I'm moving, Marcus said. He walked to his truck, started the engine, and drove into the darkness. The approach was the same as his reconnaissance. Park 3 miles out, move through the forest on foot. But this time he wasn't observing. This time he was committed. Marcus moved like a shadow through the trees. His night vision goggles turned the world into shades of green. Every step was deliberate, calculated. He'd memorized the camera positions, the guard routes, the weak points in the fence. Ghost's voice was a constant presence in his ear. Guard 1 is on the north perimeter, moving clockwise. Guard 2 is stationary at the front gate. Guard 3 just entered the kennel building. Marcus reached the fence at the southwestern corner, the blind spot between 2 cameras. He pulled out a compact set of bolt cutters. The chain link parted with a soft snick. He slipped through, closed the fence behind him. He was inside. I'm in, he whispered. Copy, Ghost replied. Be advised, thermal imaging shows 12 heat signatures in the kennel building. All canine, 1 human. That's your guard. Marcus moved toward the kennel building. It was a long, low structure. Metal roof. Concrete walls. Designed to be functional, not comfortable. He could hear the dogs inside. A few barks, whines. They sensed something was different. Someone was coming. He reached the side door. It was locked, but it was a standard commercial lock. Marcus had it open in 15 seconds. He slipped inside. The smell hit him first. Dogs, urine, disinfectant. And underneath it all, the smell of fear. These animals had been kept here, trained, here, bred here, but never loved. The guard was at the far end of the building, sitting in a folding chair, scrolling through his phone. Bored. He didn't hear Marcus approach. Didn't see him until it was too late. Marcus moved fast. A chokehold applied with precision. The guard struggled for 3 seconds, then went limp, unconscious, not dead. Marcus zip-tied his hands and feet, gagged him with duct tape, dragged him into an empty storage closet. Guard down, Marcus whispered. No alerts. Clear, Ghost confirmed. You've got maybe 20 minutes before someone notices he's not responding to radio checks. 20 minutes. Marcus turned to the kennels, and that's when he saw them. 12 German shepherds, all staring at him. Some were young, maybe a year old. Others were older, battle-scarred, used. In the far kennel, separated from the others, was Luna. She was lying on a thin mat. Her coat was dull, her eyes were tired. But when she saw Marcus, when she saw the uniform, something changed. Her ears perked up. She stood slowly, stiffly, and she walked to the front of her kennel. She knew. Somehow she knew this soldier was here for her. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He'd seen a lot of pain in his career, a lot of suffering. But seeing Luna like this, seeing what they'd done to James's partner, it broke something in him, and hardened something else. He began opening kennels, one by one. The dogs were wary at first, confused. They'd been locked up for so long they didn't understand freedom. But Marcus spoke to them, used the commands he'd learned working with canine units. Come, heel, good dog. And then Hope appeared. She must have followed his scent, must have slipped through the fence cut. The tiny puppy walked into the kennel building and went straight to Luna. Mother and daughter saw each other for the first time since Hope had been taken. Luna's entire body trembled. She lowered her head, nuzzled her puppy, and a sound came from her throat. Not a bark, not a whine. Something deeper. A cry of recognition, of relief. Marcus's earpiece crackled. Marcus, we've got a problem. Black SUV just pulled through the front gate. 4 occupants. They're heading to the main building. Copy. I need 5 more minutes. You don't have 5 minutes, Ghost said, his voice urgent. Wait. They're not going to the main building. They're heading to the kennels. You've got maybe 60 seconds. Marcus swore under his breath. He couldn't get all 12 dogs out in 60 seconds. He had to make a choice. He grabbed a remote door control from the guard's belt, hit the button. The large cargo door at the end of the building began to roll up. Run, Marcus commanded. Out, go. The younger dogs bolted immediately, their instincts overriding their training. They ran through the open door into the darkness. But the older dogs hesitated. They'd been broken, conditioned. They didn't know how to run anymore. Marcus heard footsteps outside. Voices. He had seconds. He went to Luna's kennel, clipped a leash to her collar. Come on, girl, we're leaving. James would want you to come home. At the sound of James's name, something flickered in Luna's eyes. Memory, recognition. She moved, slowly but deliberately. Hope stayed pressed against her mother's side. Marcus led them towards the door, and that's when the men entered. There were 4 of them. Armed, the man in front was the one Marcus had seen in the expensive suit during his reconnaissance. Up close, his face was hard, ruthless. This was a man who built his empire on suffering and didn't lose sleep over it. Who the hell are you? The man demanded. His hand went to the pistol on his hip. Marcus didn't answer. He moved. Years of training compressed into 2 seconds of explosive violence. He stepped inside the man's drawer, delivered a palm strike to his wrist that sent the pistol clattering to the floor, followed with an elbow to the jaw that dropped him like a stone. The other 3 men rushed him. Marcus fought like he'd been trained to fight. Not for sport, not for show, for survival. A knee to a gut, a throat strike, a takedown that left one man gasping on the concrete. In 15 seconds, all 4 men were on the ground, groaning, defeated. Ghost, I'm compromised. Need immediate extraction. Already on it, Ghost replied. I've got FBI and ATF en route. Called it in as a federal operation. They're 10 minutes out. Marcus grabbed Luna's leash. Come on. We're going. But as he turned to leave, he saw something. The man in the suit was reaching for something. Not a gun. A radio. Marcus kicked it from his hand, but it was too late. The man smiled through bloodied teeth. "You have no idea what you've just done," he rasped. "Sheriff Vaughn is on his way. You'll never make it off this property." Marcus looked down at him. "Sheriff Vaughn is about to have a very bad night." He led Luna and Hope out of the building. The other dogs, the ones that had run, were scattered across the compound, confused. Free but not knowing what to do with freedom. Marcus couldn't get them all. Not now. But he'd done what he came to do. He'd gotten Luna. The sound of sirens split the night. But they weren't coming from the direction of town. They were coming from the north. FBI, ATF. Ghost had moved faster than Marcus expected. Within minutes, the compound was flooded with federal agents, floodlights, tactical teams. The cavalry had arrived. A woman in an FBI windbreaker approached Marcus. "Sergeant Kane?" Marcus nodded. "Special Agent Kimberly Torres. We've been building a case against Sentinel Solutions for 8 months. Your contact, Agent Rivera, gave us everything we needed for an emergency raid warrant. This compound is now a federal crime scene." Marcus looked at the kennel building, at the men on the ground being handcuffed, at the dogs being carefully secured by handlers who knew what they were doing. "There's a sheriff on his way here. Robert Vaughn. He's part of this." Agent Torres smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Sheriff Vaughn was arrested 20 minutes ago at his home, along with 3 other county officials. They're all being charged under RICO statutes. This operation is over. And just like that, it was. The battle Marcus had been preparing for. The war he'd been ready to fight. It ended not with gunfire, but with handcuffs and Miranda rights. Justice delivered not by soldiers, but by law enforcement officers doing their jobs. Marcus led Luna and Hope to his truck. Sarah was already there, having driven up as soon as she heard the FBI was moving in. She examined Luna quickly, professionally. "She's malnourished, dehydrated. She'll need months of care, but Marcus, she's strong. She's a survivor." Alex appeared, her camera documenting everything. The dogs being rescued, the arrests being made, the evidence being catalogued. She was crying. Openly, unashamedly. "James would be so proud of you," she said to Marcus. "You brought her home." Marcus looked at Luna, at Hope, at the other dogs being loaded into transport vehicles. He thought about James, about the promise he'd made 3 years ago, about the invisible man he'd tried to become. And he realized something. He'd never really left the war. He'd just been waiting for the right mission. 6 months later, the snow was melting in Timber Falls. Spring was coming to the mountains. The barn on Sarah's property wasn't a temporary medical facility anymore. It was permanent. The Silver Ridge Canine Rehabilitation Center, funded by the asset forfeiture from Sentinel Solutions, staffed by Sarah, with help from volunteers, and co-directed by Marcus Kane. He still wore his Delta Force uniform. Every day. Because Sarah had been right that first night. He'd found his mission. And this mission didn't have an end date. It was ongoing, healing the dogs that had been broken, training them for new lives, new purposes. Some would go to police departments, others to veterans who needed companions. Some, like Luna, would just retire, live out their days in peace. Luna was in the outdoor play area, moving slowly but with dignity. Her coat had grown back thick and shiny. Her eyes were brighter. Hope was beside her, now 6 months old and almost as big as her mother. The puppy was enrolled in Sarah's training program. She'd be a therapy dog, visiting hospitals and schools, bringing comfort the way she'd brought hope to Marcus. Alex's article had gone national, then international. The Sentinel Solutions case had exposed a network of illegal canine operations spanning 3 states. 14 people had been arrested. Hundreds of dogs had been recovered. And new federal legislation was being drafted to prevent it from ever happening again. Marcus stood on the porch of the center, watching Luna and Hope play. Ghost had called that morning, checking in, making sure Marcus was okay, making sure he wasn't getting restless. "You thinking about coming back?" Ghost had asked. Marcus had watched Luna lie down in the sun, hope curling up against her, and he'd smiled. "I am back, Ghost. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Because some missions don't end when the shooting stops. Some missions last a lifetime. And this mission, healing the innocent, honoring the fallen, giving hope to the broken, this was the one Marcus had been training for his entire life. He just hadn't known it until a tiny puppy had dropped a blood-stained collar at his boots and changed everything. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes come in all forms, that loyalty never dies, that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with compassion. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories that prove that the bond between a soldier and his mission, between a dog and her purpose, between brothers in arms is unbreakable. Type Amen in the comments if you believe that some promises are worth keeping, no matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs, because Marcus Kane kept his promise, and in doing so, he found his way home.